Okay, so I've owned my Civic Si for about a year now. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what it's like to drive on the street, on the track, and everything in between. So in this video, I'm going to give my long-term ownership review of the 8th gen Civic Si, and also I'm going to touch on why I'm selling it. So fun fact, I actually bought this car off of Bring a Trailer, and it has a little bit under 40,000 miles. I've modified it, I've raced it. Currently it's actually completely stock, as you can tell by the wheel gap and the stock wheels. I had to stop recording. I thought that cop was gonna smoke me or something, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, the car's completely stock. It's kind of a clean slate. Okay, so I want to start with the most important aspect of owning any car, and that's what it's like to live with on a daily basis. So sitting inside the 8th generation Civic Si. Yeah, it's an older car, it's a little bit dated, but to be honest, all like the materials, all the plastics, they've held up really well over time. And I feel like that's just a testament to kind of the build quality. Sure, it's a little cheaper, but it actually holds up and it's not gonna, you know, break. And to be honest, there's not really a whole lot of rattles in this car, so that's awesome. You had this kind of like nice suede material on the armrests, the seats, even the door cards, and it just makes the interior feel a little bit nicer. And to be honest, this kind of feeling is something that I miss with the 9th gen Civic Si, because they feel a little bit more plasticky. They have a lot more just like textured cloth and plastic. But this, I think, has a little bit more personality. It's a little bit more charming with this kind of like red stitching and the more suede-like material. So I think that's really nice. The speakers, the audio system is actually pretty decent. I put in a Bluetooth dongle, which has probably been the best upgrade for this car. Bang for a buck, it was like, I don't know, 60 or something dollars. And every single time it just works. It actually powers on instantly as soon as you like key in the car. Your phone's already connected to Bluetooth, so that's pretty sweet. Highly recommend that. The HVAC system is really easy to use, and it also works just incredibly well. I find that like in the summers, there's very few times where I'm complaining about, you know, being cold or being hot rather. The AC system works really well, cools the car down. In the winter, it also heats up pretty quickly. Visibility is a bit hard to show on camera, but it is actually pretty decent. You've got a decent rear view. The side windows are pretty solid. One thing I will say is that this A-pillar is actually pretty thick, and this is something that the sedans are a little bit different on. See, they actually have a window kind of in the corner that helps with visibility. The coupes don't. I'm assuming just for like structural rigidity, I would think. That is something that I wish that the coupes actually got. Getting into the car, it's pretty easy. It's not too bad. I will say that the door, being kind of a coupe, and the door is a lot bigger than the sedan, it opens really wide, so you have to be careful not to hit any cars. Just a quick thing to point out, I'm 5'8", and driving around the street is fine. I don't hit my head on the ceiling, but what I will say is that if you're going to track this car, keep in mind a helmet adds about like another inch or inch and a half to your head, maybe even 2 inches. And even at 5'8", my head actually does touch the roof of this car with a helmet. So that's not ideal for track, definitely not. I make it work, you know, I would basically kind of like position myself a little bit down, and yeah, it is fine. But if you're over 6 foot, man, I don't know about this car. I've heard that the sedans have more headroom. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's something to consider. The steering wheel itself is pretty small. It feels a little cheap. If you like press on the back of the buttons, you can actually see them move up. You know, you see kind of the economy car shining through in some cases, but it's not bad. Signals are actually really nice. I love that the way they sound, the indicator sound, it's actually kind of satisfying. I don't know why that's what I'm interested in, but that's what I am. Here's something that's kind of weird, and I don't know if I'm going to do a proper job of explaining this, but the steering, I want to point out, is kind of odd. So the weight is good, the feel is good, however, there's kind of this weird suspension geometry thing going on with the car. I find that like it wants to get back to center steering really, really badly, and it will force the wheel back to center steering quickly. So if you're doing like a slow turn or something and you kind of just let go of the wheel, it will rip itself around and try to get back to center. I've actually tried different alignments. I've had different suspension on this car. So I've ruled out that it's, you know, alignment based. I think it just has a really aggressive on-center steering. It's kind of annoying when you're trying to be smooth and just like you let the wheel kind of go to point itself straight and then the car jerks a certain way. So that's one kind of knock that I have against the car. But honestly, just maybe it's me, maybe I'm being weird, who knows? In terms of storage, it's a Civic, which is actually a really good thing. You have nice storage in the door card. You even have a little cubby here that I put my garage clicker, and center console is fantastic. Storage is amazing. The clutch is pretty easy to operate. I'll say that it feels a little bit mushy. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you know, everyone has a preference. It took me a second to get used to. It also catches a little bit higher than most cars that I've owned. But again, you get used to it pretty quick and it's nice and easy to drive. The shifter is fantastic. It's one of my favorite parts of this car. And once you put a couple transmission upgrades in, as well as a heavier shift knob, it's a really fun experience just to shift through gears. And honestly, it's not that bad owning a manual transmission in this car in traffic. So being a coupe, you don't have doors for the back passengers. So you got to climb in. To be honest, you got decent room back here. It's not bad at all. It's a little bit annoying having to climb in, but not horrible. It's the same nice cloth suede material in the back seats, which is really good. No rear vent. It's not a huge deal because it's a pretty small cabin. Overall, I've had people back here a couple times and there's been no like major complaints, so that's pretty good. I think if you had a kid, it might be an issue because you'd have to be doing, you know, this whole seat maneuver every single time and it would get a little bit annoying. What the hell is this? There it is. But honestly, not too bad. If you're a single guy like myself, it's not an issue at all. Here's something a little bit odd, and you can tell me if you own this car, if you agree. The suspension does kind of suck. To be honest, in stock form, I find that when you hit a pothole on one side or hit a bump or really anything, the car kind of does this like shimmy and it gets kind of annoying because it just feels like it's jiggling. I don't know if it's like a structural rigidity thing, I have no clue, but it feels like the car is just very unsettled whenever it hits bumps. And like, yeah, it's an old car, but when I think about the Mark V GTI that I owned, it was the exact same year. It felt infinitely more composed whenever you hit potholes. And yes, maybe some of this can be fixed with aftermarket suspension, but it's something to consider because the stock suspension is the comfiest option that you have when you buy this car. And if it is uncomfortable, that's kind of an issue. And I'm not saying it's this giant issue. No, it's just a little complaint that I have. It's nothing major. It still feels pretty nice, pretty comfy. On road trips, I actually quite like driving this car, weirdly enough. On the highway, it kind of just rips. Like it holds 80 miles per hour just like perfectly and is really comfortable. So the trunk is actually a pretty decent size, to be honest. The opening is pretty wide and really I haven't had a lot of issues fitting stuff in here. The seats do go down if you need to fit like a longer item. Honestly, it's a small car, right? You're gonna know instantly if you can deal with having a smaller car with less of a trunk, storage capacity. You'll know that if you're interested in buying these cars. In my experience, I really have not needed more than this trunk can actually offer. So probably one of the best parts of this car is actually the engine. This is a K20 Z3. It is, I think, almost 200 horsepower, and it is a gem of an engine. It's so fun to drive. It makes all of its power right at the top. You gotta rev the piss out of this to get literally anywhere, and that just makes it really fun to me. They're also incredibly reliable when you want to do forced induction or even just basic bolt-ons. They make some decent jam. On track, I did almost 20-minute sessions and I really never had any overheating issues. Not that I could actually tell because this car doesn't have the best temperature management system. You can only really see coolant and you can't actually see the exact coolant temperature. So it's a little bit hard to see, but at least in my experience, I never had any issues on track with this engine. I know people have gone 400,000, miles on this engine. They're just insanely reliable. So definitely a very strong point of the 8th gen Civic Si is the engine. And now that I'm talking about the engine and performance, I want to talk about the kind of characteristics that this car has on track, because I love this car on track. While it is not the fastest thing in the world, it's incredibly fun to drive. If you do coilovers, a rear sway bar, a little stiffer, and like, to be honest, just race pads, you're gonna have a blast with this car. The handling is very good once you add a rear sway bar, I will say. It doesn't really seem to want to just understeer all the time. It's actually pretty balanced from what at least my alignment and suspension setup allowed me to do. And I never felt like I just was fighting understeer. In fact, sometimes when I lifted off, it would actually oversteer. I ran Hawk DTC 60 brake pads all around, and yeah, it faded a little bit kind of near the end of the session, but it wasn't anything horrible. Overall, if you have an 8th Gen Civic SI, highly recommend putting some race pads on and just getting to the track, because these things love it. It was a blast taking it out the couple times that I did this summer. And yeah, honestly, if I was to build like a dedicated race car and a really good deal on an 8th Gen Civic SI popped up, I'd probably actually build an 8th Gen Civic SI race car, because I think that they are fantastic on track. While we're on this topic, one thing I did want to mention that I learned in my modifying journey is that the K20 engine drones a lot and also has a lot of vibrations. I did a couple mods. One of them was an exhaust. It was a full race exhaust, and to be honest, it droned horrendously. Maybe like the welds were bad and it was, you know, having an exhaust leak, but honestly, it seemed fine. I tightened it down numerous times, checked for leaks. The drone was horrible, to be honest. I don't know. But like, yeah, see, it's just droning right now. And I ended up taking it off and selling it. If you're like sensitive to sound like me, that's something to consider. Because I, for one, actually love a loud exhaust. I owned a straight piped turbo Miata for years and had no complaints with that. The issue is like, it would drone, but not actually make exhaust noise. And that's kind of the thing that rubbed me the wrong way and eventually led me to just go stock exhaust. However, if you do engine mounts up front, it actually kind of increases the like fake exhaust noise almost. And it really does sound pretty damn solid. So I guess, long story short, I would think about maybe a 2.5-inch exhaust before going to a 3-inch like I did. It'll likely drone less and probably sound better, to be honest. Yeah, you'll sacrifice a couple horsepower, but I don't know, man. I hate drone. I would never deal with that again. I really like this car and I would absolutely recommend it. I think if you can splurge for a clean example, it's gonna pay off in the long run. To be honest, you cannot find these cars in clean condition anymore, just like going on Facebook Marketplace. You have to really wait for it to come to you. You're probably going to have to be ready to travel for it or ship it. But I've learned that getting a clean car always pays off in the long run. They're easier to work on, they have better history, they're typically stock and unmodified. I would just highly recommend it. So speaking of selling and buying cars, I'm going to talk about why I'm actually selling my 8th Gen Civic SI. So I actually work fully remote right now. There's a deer. Hello. Anyway, so I actually work fully remote right now, and to be honest, I do not drive much at all. When I do, it's typically to go to the gym or get groceries, which is really like a mile or two away. I don't need to own a car like this to do that. Recently, I actually bought a Nissan 370Z. Really excited to post some videos about that. In my opinion, I really like having a two-car system. I like having a stock car, usually with an automatic transmission, and then a modified car. I find that it just works a lot better for me in my situation, especially working remote. There's a lot of times where I just need to go, you know, a mile to the gym, and I don't want to get my nice car out, and I don't know. I just think it's better to have like a super cheap car that I don't have to care about sometimes. And also for road trips. I'm not saying that this is like a bad road trip car or anything like that. but I like having a car that I really don't have to worry about or care about, and also that other people can drive, because contrary to a lot of our experiences as car enthusiasts, most people don't know how to drive manual transmissions. And that has a lot of issues when you're going on road trips with people and you're like, oh, well, I just realized that now I have to drive the entire time because I'm the only one that can literally drive this car. Anyway, long story short, I'm gonna be selling this car soon. I am sad to see it go, and hey, who knows, maybe I'll grab another 8th gen in a couple years from now. I don't know, we'll see. So with that, thank you for watching the Civic Si videos. If you haven't seen them, I'll link the playlist above. It's been a really good experience, and honestly, I would recommend this car to literally anyone. I think it's awesome. I am incredibly excited to be moving on to the next vehicle, the 370Z. I've been posting about it on Instagram, so follow me there and you'll see a lot of sneak peeks. To be honest, I am just really happy with it. I feel like it's a breath of fresh air having kind of a 2-car system again, being able to take my time making videos and not have to worry about like, oh, where am I gonna, get a car to drive into the gym or, get food or whatever. So it's just kind of been really refreshing to have another car like that. And I also took a little break from YouTube. I think that definitely helped. I did a little reset just in YouTube, and then also with life, I'm making a couple changes, and man, to be honest, I'm just pumped for next year. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be sad, not having this car, but I'm very excited for the future. But okay, that is it. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to turn you around to see a deer that's just been staring at me this entire time. Literally, he's just been here chilling.